Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Between the Vines. I'm Jennifer Phillips Russo, Cornell Viticulture Extension Specialist, and this is a program that's provided to you by both Penn State and Cornell University for the Lake Erie Regional Grape Program. Welcome back. Today, again, we have our special guest, Dr. Terry Bates, who's talking to us about the top 10 research and study that he has done in the Concord industry
In
and
nutrition,
more in
top
nutrition.
top 10 in nutrition.
In nutrition and throughout our region. Thank you for that. So
Yeah.
welcome back, Dr. Terry Bates, and we're going to be
Good morning. Happy to be
talking.
here again.
Yay! We have 7 more after this.
Yeah.
So we're
This
talking
one will
today.
be, we're going to make this one short. I promise.
So yeah, infamous words, and then we go on and on and on. All right. So today we're talking about the West Tier, which happened at the old lab, correct?
Yes, at the Fredonia lab. It was planted in, I'm going to share my screen. It was planted in the late 1950s. I want to say 1956, but I'm not.
So I think I know who started this, but I see the face there. Do you want to
Yeah,
describe?
yeah. So, okay. So this is one of the famous Nelson Shaulis multi-factorial experiments. So this is probably the most famous or the most talked about is the West Tier factorial, although Nelson had other factorial experiments, which are just as cool.
So before we go any further, I want to
Yeah,
ask if you would briefly describe what a factorial experiment is
yeah.
for our listeners.
So, so a lot of times you think of doing research as in like I've done work on soil pH. What is the response of Concord vines to soil pH? And what we're really looking for there is like a response curve. So we'll pick several soil pH levels and then grow the vines in those different soil pH levels. And we kind of, most things in biology aren't linear the whole way. It's like they'll be linear for a while and then they plateau. So it's kind of a curve. And we kind of look for what's the response curve? Where does the inflection point happen? So we know, okay, adjust your soil pH up to this level, but adjusting it anymore really doesn't help. And affect what Nelson did with his factorial experiments is it wasn't, it's usually, I call it binary, right? It's an on off. Um, but you have multiple on-offs. So multiple factors, maybe not at a lot of levels. It's just, two pruning levels or two floor management. But when you put them all in combination, you end up with these multiple factors. So in the case of the West Tier factorial, if you look at all the treatments in all their combinations, there was 96 different treatment combinations
Holy cow.
in that trial. And so I always say one of the things that like got criticized was that it wasn't replicated. So he had them in 6 vine plots, but those 6 vine plots weren't then replicated again. Because we always talk about when we want to publish papers, you want to, how many times did you replicate that experiment? And it's like if he had taken the 96 treatment combinations and then replicated them 4 times, it would have taken up the entire farm. So really the power in this is to look at the interactions between the factors. And so let's just talk about the West Tier and then it'll make sense. I
Okay.
hope. Okay. So in the West Tier, I break it out in saying that there were 3 below ground treatments and 3 above ground treatments. And then they were all, put in combination. So nitrogen, there was 0, 50, and 100 pounds of actual nitrogen applied every year. Floor management was either cultivation or sod in the row centers. And you can kind of see that in this one part of the block, right? You can see where those vines were cultivated because you see brown between the
That's right.
vines versus having sod in the row centers.
You can see it online on YouTube if you want to watch this, and so you have
Oh
the
yeah,
visual.
sorry, I forget that. Not everyone's seeing the visual. Rootstock was own rooted Concord vines, which is our industry standard,
Mhm.
versus 3309C rootstock, which is a common rootstock used in the East. At the time, this again, we're going back to the 1950s. Nelson was working with a UC, I think it was a UC Davis professor, Lloyd Leiter, Lord,
Lord Lighter?
yeah, um, who was a rootstock guy, and so they used different. They were looking at like 3309 and 3306 and some other rootstocks, and they started using 3309. So those are the three below ground treatments: nitrogen level, floor management, and rootstock. And so you'd have a combination, like you'd have 0 pounds of nitrogen under cultivation with own rooted vines, and you'd have 0 nitrogen under cultivation with 3309 vines. So like there was a complete combination of those treatments on a
Right.
particular set of vines. Now, for the above ground treatments, you had pruning severity, so 30 plus 10 or 60 plus 10 balance pruning. Training was either single curtain or double curtain.
Oh,
So this is a pretty illustrative photo, is in that here are the single curtain vines, obviously, and here are the double curtain vines to the left. I know not everyone can see this. So there are the same number of vines on the right side of the picture in single curtain as there is in the left side of the picture in double curtain. It's just that in double curtain, you've divided the canopy over 2 trellis wires, and this is a great illustration to show how the double curtain intercepts more sunlight per unit land area, which can lead to higher productivity of the vines if you can support that with enough vine size, right? You have to grow enough canopy to be able to fill 2 trellis wires.
right. That is a great visual.
And then shoe positioning. So there was either shoe positioned or not shoe positioned vines, and the idea was you're trying to improve the fruitfulness of the buds that you are going to retain during pruning. So you do that by downward shoot positioning in Concord. So you have this drooping growth habit, and you're shoot positioning to eliminate shading within internal canopy shading. And so you improve the fruitfulness of the buds, of the base buds that you're going to leave during pruning. And the original Geneva double curtain work that was done, it's like Nelson would not call it Geneva double curtain unless there was shoe positioning
Wow.
employed. You needed to maintain those 2 different curtains of foliage to have it actually be GDC, called GDC.
Wow.
So, okay, that's a story for another time. All the above ground stuff. So pruning severity and training and shoe positioning doesn't have anything to do with nutrition, but nitrogen level, floor management, and rootstock does have something to do with nutrition and vine size development. So to me, the West tier is all about vine size and vine size management. So my buddy Keith Striegler, who now works for Gallo, he always wants me to publish the West tier information. So there was an article published by Nelson back in 1960 something. And we can post a link to that article that does talk about the West tier and the results of the West tier from like its original planting. And then when Nelson retired, Bob Poole took over the West tier Factorial, kept those treatments going. And then when I started working at Fredonia, I took over the West tier and kept the treatments going for a while. So we have like this long-term data set on these treatments. And so that could all be put together. There's bits and pieces of it that have been published places, but like that long-term data set could be published.
So this entire factorial was kept over 40 years?
Yes.
Holy
Yep.
Christmas.
Yes. And to me that it's it would be cool to publish the long-term data set, but to me the answer is the same, that especially when it comes to the below ground treatments, it's all about vine size. So Nelson had this lesson that we learned from viticulture of that vine size is primarily influenced by water and nutrient availability and the ability of the plant to take up those water and nutrients that's available in the soil. And that has a direct influence on vine size, and then vine size has an influence on productivity.
Right.
So productivity, vine size and productivity is indirectly related to, say, pruning level or crop load management, right? So I always say when someone says, oh, I'm having productivity problems with my vineyard, the vine size is too small, I'm not intercepting enough sunlight, what should I prune to? It's like, I don't care what you prune to. Let's start working on what your water and nutrient problems are first. Fix those, and then even when we're planting young vines, we say you got to grow a vine before you can grow a crop. Well, in a mature vineyard, that's the same thing. You have to grow the vine first. You have to grow enough foliage to intercept sunlight and turn that sunlight into energy. So this whole west tier thing to me is about vine size management and the treatments. So like with floor management, if you have sod that outcompetes the grapevines for water, and so the vine size are small, so you do a little cultivation and the vine size gets a little bigger. And then you have 0 pounds of nitrogen, 50 pounds of nitrogen, or 100 pounds of nitrogen, and you have no nitrogen and growing them in sod, they're very, very small vines. And then you do some cultivation and add some nitrogen, and all of a sudden you have bigger vines and higher productivity. And another, you may, like today, you may think, wow, that's just not rocket science. You give the vines a little water and you give them some nitrogen and they're bigger and they do better. You got to remember when Nelson started this trial, when he started working like in the late 40s and the early 1950s, like 2 tons per acre was kind of good in terms of yield. So like, yeah, he was walking into a situation where grapevines were grown like little bushes. And he was like, hey, if we give them some water and we give them some fertilizer, they're going to grow bigger and then we can have bigger crops. And so I think that foundational lesson to me is important in that it's basic horticulture, right? Water and nutrient availability and uptake leads to higher vine growth, more light interception, and increased productivity. And then, okay, so now we have this whole issue about rootstock. So we've cultivation is better than sod in terms of water management. A little bit of fertilizer is better than no fertilizer in terms of nutrient management. I have to say, if you go, I always say this, when he went from 0 to 50 pounds of nitrogen, he saw a boost in vine size and yield. When he went from 50 to 100 pounds of nitrogen, he did not see any increase in vine size or yield. Right. So you still ask the question, well, how much nitrogen do the vines need? And it's like, well, it might be 50, but it's not 100. Is it 80? Is it 40? And so we're going to talk about other nitrogen work that we've done since then, kind of looking at that response curve. But in this case, like there hasn't been any evidence that you need to apply 100 pounds of actual nitrogen or 150 pounds or 200 pounds of actual nitrogen, which I know some growers, they used to do it. I haven't heard too many people doing that recently.
I haven't heard that either. And I'm also curious about the cultivation.
Yeah. Okay. So as far as rootstock, so we talked about the root excavation studies earlier, and we know that 3309 rootstock goes pretty much straight down and unrooted Concord spreads. And that's why we were saying like stuff that happens in floor management. If you have competitive covers growing there, it influences the unrooted vines more than the grafted vines. And in this case with the West here, like if you had vines grafted onto 3309 and you could have sod and either 0 nitrogen or 50 pounds of nitrogen, and you had adequate vine size and yield. So it's like we could solve a lot of our nutrition problems by just putting them on a rootstock. There is the caveat with, at least with 3309 rootstock, that in wet years, the vines can get too much water and it blows the berries up with water and dilutes the bricks. And since processors pay for grapes based on sugar concentration, not sugar content, 3309 can look bad in wet years, but they look great in dry years. When unrooted vines run out of water, 3309 vines have adequate water and adequate sugar concentration in the berries. Huh. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but it's also jumped many more questions in my head about viticultural research that should go on, which you may have already. Well, we'll hear about that later. Like I'm sitting here thinking, is it that big of a difference in the dilution factor? But I guess it is if it's the difference between, a 15.5 and a 15 or a 15 and a 14.5.
Yes. It's more like, yeah, it's more like 14.5 versus 15.2 can make all the difference.
Mhm.
And to me, so when you calculate it on a sugar per berry basis, they, in a wet year, own rooted and grafted vines, they produce the same amount of sugar, right? The both vines have plenty of water, photosynthesis is going on, you produce the same amount of sugar. It's just that with 3309, the berries are bigger and it dilutes the concentration of the sugar. So own rooted vines have, say 15.5 and grafted vines have 14.5. And if the cutoff is 15, that makes all the difference on whether you can deliver your grapes or not, even though there's the same amount of sugar like in the berries.
I wonder
It's
if it's
just,
better to do half and half plantings.
yeah. So in dry years, it's the owner vines run out of water, so they don't produce sugar. So they still may have smaller berries, but they just don't have enough sugar, so they don't, whatever. They're not making the bricks by harvest, where grafted vines are, because they're well watered, they have lots of photosynthesis, producing sugar, and that's being pumped into the berries, which aren't as big because it's a dry year, and that makes them look good in dry years. Nelson used to say, and I think it might even be quoted right out of the paper, that grafted vines are superior in dry years or lower than average precipitation years, and they are inferior in wet to above average precipitation years. It just leads to the question of, is there a better rootstock out there that we can use, which we'll talk about later.
So the nitrogen thing is very interesting. I like that you said you didn't get any more of a boost after 50 pounds per nitrogen. Because I know that there were some people, like you had mentioned in the past, that were putting on just blanketing, which led into some of your efficient vineyard work as well. 100 pounds per
Yeah.
acre across the board.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to think about our industry. In general, our industry are own rooted vines, and they do manage the floor, to try to eliminate competition for water during the times of the year that the vines need water. And then as far as nitrogen goes, it's to put on 100 pounds of actual nitrogen. It had historically has been cheap insurance, right? The fertilizer has been low cost, and it's like, oh, 50 pounds is good. I'm just going to overshoot it. I'm going to apply 100 pounds of nitrogen per acre, and that's fine. But now the cost of fertilizer has been going up. The cost of fuel to drive through the vineyards going up. Cost of labor is going. Everything's going up. So now our margins are getting tighter and tighter. And you're like, oh, do I really need that?
Right?
And then there's the environmental factor. Sure, we can dump on this fertilizer, and then when you find out that half of it ends up, just leaching through the soil profile, that's not good either. So we're trying to be environmentally sustainable too by dialing back, and so we have recommends based on adding how much nitrogen you add per percent organic matter in your soil. And if you have to put on large doses of nitrogen, do it in a split application so it's more efficient and less impactful on the environment.
And it's the 25% efficiency uptake.
Yes. Yeah. So the West here, to me, these factorial experiments were very important, and there's a lot of great lessons learned, and it's the foundation. As I said, it's a binary thing. It's on or off. Did it work? Did it not work? Did this combination work or not work? And then we see that foundational like binary code and then we go from there and say, okay, we know that nitrogen has an effect. Okay, let's do more experiments to look at proper nitrogen levels. Or floor management works, getting the water competition away from the vines. That's a good thing. Okay, well, how can we do it better? How can we do different floor management treatments or different floor management strategies to get the vines the water they need when they need it? What rootstock do we use, and does the rootstock change with soil type? And we've done all those things since then. But it was this foundational kind of research, these multifactorial experiments, that taught us how to grow grapes and they pointed us in the right direction for, okay, where do we want to explore further in terms of dialing in our management practices.
It is an amazing study, and I can't believe that it was continued for decades. What a great data set. And like you said, I look forward to hearing what stemmed off of this research. And I know that we talk about it a lot in our recommendations that we give, but hearing how it progressed has been very helpful. So thank you for sharing all of that. What's next?
What is next? Let's see. What's my next slide?
Oh,
Nitrogen fertilizer efficiency. So we'll talk about that next time.
perfect. So
Yep.
Terry and I are both traveling next week, so you may have to wait a little bit longer for the next one, but just keep you the anticipation of coming back and checking in. So is there anything you wanted to add before we go on or before we sign off?
Bloom prediction. The locust so today is May 30th. And the locust in Westfield in my backyard was blooming. That puts us like 10 days from Concord bloom on primary shoots that were not frosted. Because I know there's some frost damage out there. So on May 1st, we had looked at the Lake Erie growing degree day accumulation, and we predicted Concord bloom was going to be around June 8 or 9. And now locust is blooming. That still puts us Concord bloom around June 8 or 9. So if you're trying to kind of schedule your season around that,
thank you for bringing that up, because you should be keeping track of that, not only in your viticulture extension planning calendar that the Lake Erie Regional Grape Program gives out to all of your members. That's for your own data management, but you should be putting that into NUA for all of your models, your grape berry moth model. The tighter you have it on your own farm, the better the prediction for you. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah. You can use your MyEV and MyEV data collector to go out and assess where you have frost damage. And then that would lead into where you would do crop estimation samples at 30 days after bloom. So there's lots of stuff you could be doing right now.
Lots of stuff. And you should get out there and do it. And if you do have questions about the MyEV platform that Terry was just mentioning, you can go to the VIT blog on the My Efficient Vineyard website. You can contact myself via email, and we can set up an appointment to go over that and set your farm up if interested. And then Terry and I will probably be scheduling another workshop. It's definitely during the Winter Grower Conference next March, but for this season, hopefully we can get another one in. I'm not sure when, but I would love to do it before crop estimation. If you can see his face laughing at me because our tight schedule thus far. Yeah.
Everything's tight. Everyone's busy this time of year. It's great. It's really
well. I hope all's well with you and your operations. Please, if you have any questions, leave comments below on YouTube or reach out via email. And thank you, Dr. Terry, for joining us again. And we'll see you soon.
Okay.
Have a great week, everyone.